Did you punch the record?
I did not on that.
Okay. I will take care of that. We are recording. We are up to lesson 8 in our series of lessons on not only growing our faith, but sharing our faith, growing our faith for the purpose of sharing our faith. And one of the things that I feel like is a significant omission in many classes, seminars, various things about evangelism. We talk a lot about what to teach. We talk a lot about how to teach it. But there's a very, very important topic that is quite often overlooked, and that is, what are you going to do with someone who responds? And they commit their life to Christ, they become a disciple. As I have mentioned in previous lessons, that is kind of the, well, you'll figure it out. Just get them in the building, get them to be attending, and they'll catch on. And if they don't catch on, they'll leave. And if they don't leave and they don't catch on, they'll at least kind of hang around. And hopefully, by osmosis or something, they will just kind of absorb what they're supposed to do. And as I have grown older and older and older, that just doesn't cut it. If we're going to spend, weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks getting them ready to become a new disciple of Christ, then it seems like we should spend almost as much, if not exactly as much time, sharing with them what it means to be a new disciple. But there is this other topic. If somebody could, we want to read Isaiah 29. It's interesting little passage, 29 verses 13 and 14. It's not a direct, Jesus makes it a direct statement. He quotes Isaiah 29, 13 and 14. I'm in 28. But it's part of a conversation that the Lord is having with Israel through Isaiah. Somebody can read verses 13 and 14.
Then the Lord said, because this people approaches me with their words and honors me with their lips, but their heart is far away from me, and their reverence for me consists of the commandment of men that is taught. Therefore, behold, I will once again deal marvelously with this people, wondrously marvelous. And the wisdom of their wise men will perish, and the understanding of their men who have understanding will be concealed.
Okay, so one of the things that God has struggled with his people, all the way from the Garden of Eden up to August the 25th of 2024, is that what his people say and what his people do are sometimes two very different things. The difference between saying something and actually doing something has persisted throughout the generations. And God obviously had this struggle with the folks in Israel. Jesus had the struggle with his disciples. And throughout every generation, there have been individuals who say A, B, or C, and yet they do X, Y, and Z. I have been a part, and I was going to count this up. I counted this up one time several months ago, and I've forgotten the exact number. I think it's 13, 14, 15 different congregations, each one of which is incredibly unique. Every congregation has its own personality, is as unique as the members that make it up. But throughout my experience with all of these different congregations, I have seen in almost every one of them, and I don't want to make a blanket statement of every single congregation, but a great many of them say they want to grow. And even a couple of them have really laid out large amounts of money, bringing in guest speakers, bringing in programs, hiring ministers specifically for the purpose of evangelism. But deep down inside, in the congregation itself, there is a great resistance to growing. And that little churches, medium-sized churches, big churches, there is one I tell you, of all the things I have lost, I miss my mind the most. What is it when there's a variation to a rule? It's not a variation. All I can think of is excuse. It's not exception. Exception. I knew it started with an E. The one exception is new congregations. Congregations that are newly planted, or congregations that will split off from other congregations because of the newness of their situation, because very, very often new congregations are created with a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation, a lot of energy. They will have the least amount of resistance. And there's a couple of things that we're going to talk about this morning that they don't have. They don't have to deal with. They don't have the speed bump that other congregations have. Okay, yeah, they're resistant to genuine growth. If you had to surmise, if you had to make a guess as to why congregations will verbally say that they want to grow and actually, do some things that indicate that they really want to grow, and yet subconsciously, underneath the surface, sabotage some of their efforts. Why do you think it might be?
In my mind, it's not the growth that they're against. It's not the new faces. It's not the additional voices in the hymns. It's the fear of change.
Okay.
Because with new faces and new bodies come new personalities and new ideas. And they might say, well, let's try something different.
Yes.
No, we cannot do that because we are set in our ways. We have our patterns. We have our routines. And if we change our routines, the puzzle will fall apart. You can't take out this piece and expect the puzzle to be finished. So new ideas scare us.
New ideas scare us. The word change terrifies us.
And I can speak from experience. New ideas mean change, and change means getting out of the routine, and we're comfortable with our routines.
Brett?
Just to echo a very astute comment there, hardly anything in nature, wherever you look, grows without change. Growth is change. Virtually any organism you look at birth or shortly thereafter is almost unrecognizable when you see the adult version, whether it be a plant, whether it be an insect, whether it be a mammal of some sort. So to me, when you say you want growth, you're saying that you want change, because the two can't be separated.
Yeah. Okay, so Brad's comment is that in nature, nothing grows without change. And growth and change are not 100% synonymous, but think back to your childhood and how much, and I think we're probably all a little bit different, but remember how much it hurt to grow? I had horrendous leg cramps, just vicious leg cramps, and I didn't know it at the time, but my body was saying, okay, you're getting ready for a new size of britches, so here. And now things are a little bit different the older that we get. We don't grow this way, we tend to grow this way, and but growth still hurts. And I have over the past even few months, I got out the other morning and I was going to tackle a chore that needed to be tackled out in our place. And about an hour later, I'm like, I didn't used to suffer this much. I mean, yes, I've worked out in the sun, all my life, and I've worked with my hands and done hard labor and various. And after about an hour, I'm like, okay, I'm done. And so everything about our world, if we're going to stay alive, requires change. And then, by the way, does anybody else have an idea as to why congregations kind of sabotage their own efforts, even subconsciously? I'm not saying people set about and say, oh, congregation says we want to have an evangelism program. I'm going to go out and I'm going to blow this thing up. We don't do that. But are there other reasons why subconsciously we will put the brakes on something? I think Darren hit the nail on the head. It's the word that I had down. And this kind of gets back to the younger a congregation is, the more excitement that the congregation has, the more energy that the congregation has, they're more willing to step outside the quote-unquote box, because their box is still pretty pliable. It's still pretty open to various and sundry thoughts and ideas. And believe it or not, even our building architecture can have a huge role in our acceptance of change. We are lucky. We really are. I don't know when you all made the decision to go from pews. I'm certain that at one time this auditorium had pews.
It did. They were creepy.
To switch from pews to chairs, that's a significant change. But it really does open up we call it an auditorium, sometimes we call it a sanctuary, our meeting room, and some congregations make that change very easy, some congregations don't. In Aztec, we completely redid our auditorium, but there was some resistance to going from pews to chairs. And so I think it was the first 3 rows on both sides of or did we fan it out, or we just have the 2? I think we just had the 2 sections. They kept the pews because there were a couple of families that, church means pews. And so but after a few years, even those families said, this is kind of silly. Let's get rid of these pews and let's just go to all chairs. So a beautiful example of a congregation making a change and yet accepting differences of opinion. they did that beautifully, and I really appreciate that. Okay, so for me, the number one reason why congregations ultimately work against growth is the fear of change, and it is universal, and the very definition of conservatism is wanting to do things the same way. And I would think that primarily the most of us in this room, most of us in this congregation would self-identify at least moderately conservative, or maybe some of us hardcore conservative. We just, once we figure out the way it works, that's the way it works. Don't be changing. That's why I think that most women are liberals, hardcore, blazing, their hair on fire liberals. Because every 6 months we have to rearrange the furniture in our house. It can't stay the same. It's got to be rearranged. And the hardcore conservative is saying, no, that chair belongs there. Don't change it. So democracy in action is husbands and wives, and sometimes daughters, getting along with the desire to completely rearrange the house as opposed to leaving the house the way it is. If you take one of my tools, put it back in the exact same place that it was. I'm a conservative. Don't be changing. Oh, me. Okay, so how do we prepare a nursery for our new babies? Well, obviously, there are some doctrinal things that we need to prepare them. So we're going to have opportunities. We're going to teach them. We're going to continue to have them grow. We talked about that last week, that if there is a real one-on-one relationship with our student, that we transfer that. We should be transferring that all along, but we're going to transfer that to all of us are going to discipline disciple the new baby. And so that is all going to be taking place. But between our ears, there are some things that we're going to have to do to prepare a nursery. And number one, we must not only accept change, we have to welcome it and encourage it. And I'm not talking about change just for change's sake, all right? There are people who want to, like I said, blow things up just for the excitement of blowing things up. That's not constructive. That is not creating a new healthy situation for anyone. We don't turn around, we don't turn all the chairs facing this way to facing that way, and then the next week we face all the chairs that way, and then the next week we change all the chairs so that they're facing this way. That's not what I'm talking about. But if we are going to accept, and if we are going to actually encourage new babies to grow, then just exactly what Darren said, they're going to ask some questions. Why can't we do this? Or why do you always do it this way? Or would it be acceptable if I, did this or that or the other thing? But that's change. And change is uncomfortable. And the longer that we do something, the more conservative then that process becomes, and the more difficult it is to change. That's why congregations that are relatively young, in the sense of not being a congregation for a long period of time, not young in terms of membership, but young in terms of age, are more receptive to doing things out of the box, because like I said, their box is a little bit more pliable. And so accepting change is one thing, but welcoming it and even encouraging it pushes us even a little bit further. And for us old fogies, for us hardcore dyed-in-the-wool conservatives, it's even that much more difficult. And I'm talking about myself. I like order. I like consistency. I like familiarity. And so when people start changing things, you know, my little radar antennas poke up and I'm like, why are they doing this? Why? Are they doing this to make me feel uncomfortable? Or are they doing this because it's a genuine improvement? Or it helps us worship better, or whatever the case may be. Any thoughts about accepting change, welcoming it, encouraging it?
It has to go beyond encouraging it. You have to strategically plan
Yes.
for change. And there are several elements to that. One of the most simple, and usually the first that is missed, is answering questions that you haven't had to answer in decades. One of the most important soliloquies in my life came from a 14-year-old girl who was a new convert. And she says, well, I've watched for a long time. I truly believe in Jesus Christ. But you folks seem to spend a lot of time not doing things. What is it that you do? Powerful. Powerful. And from that point on, I made a promise to myself that I would prepare for change in that specific way by relishing questions like that rather than being either annoyed or frightened by them. I think it was a spectacular question to ask, and it showed how deep her commitment already was. She was wanting to know, what can I do? Wow.
Yeah.
I wish we had a lot more of those.
Yeah.
So to me, part of that preparation is to be very open and, if not downright joyous, about questions that may challenge us. We really should be challenged. And we should accept the truth in all of its forms. And instead of clinging or being intimidated by these things, we should absolutely, talking about encouraging these questions.
If the video or audio did not pick up Brad's comment was, in addition to accepting change, encouraging change, welcoming change, we have to very strategically plan for it. And a part of that is listening for questions and even posing questions. Excellent point is that a lot of times what my experience has been is that someone will decide, okay, we're going to grow and we're going to have this big evangelistic seminar, we're going to invite a speaker, we're going to do all these things, or we're even going to hire an evangelistic minister. And there hasn't been any real kind of strategic planning. There hasn't been any kind of, okay, what does that mean? What does bringing new people into the church, what is that going to do? And so the good Lord, in his infinite, incredible wisdom, did not give us babies immediately. You've got 9 months to get ready for that little one that's going to show up. And so there's a lot of planning, and there's a lot of thinking, and a lot of organization that goes on before that little baby arrives. And as the day gets closer and closer and closer, the excitement grows and the planning grows, and we do all of these things. And our congregation should be the same way. We should never expect that, oh, we're going to have an evangelistic seminar and we're going to have 8, 10, 12 different baptisms and everything's going to be wonderful. Well, maybe we need to step back and ask some questions and do some planning and do some thinking as a part of welcoming and encouraging change. Okay, thank you, Brad. Appreciate that very, very, very much. My second point here is that our new disciples will, on occasion, make mistakes. Those of you who are parents, did any of your children reach adulthood without ever making a mistake? They just perfectly sailed through their life, and I don't. No. In fact, we actually anticipate that they're going to make a mistake. Dads, the first time you handed your son a hammer, your little boy watches you hammer things, or he watches you with your saw and all these kind of things. And, Daddy, can I do it? Daddy, can I do it? Oh, okay, well, you're old enough. I think I reckon you can handle this. And you hand them the hammer, what's going to happen? It's not going to be very long before the tears start flowing. You know it. You give the child your car keys. You know that a speeding ticket is going to be there, or a bent fender is going to be there, or you know it, you hate it, you don't want it to happen, but you understand these things happen because mistakes happen. It's just that with us, because we know each other, we've grown up, many of you have grown up together, we're all adults. When we make a little mistake, there's the little side glance, there's the little wink, there's the, okay, but we forgive very, very quickly. If anything is said at all, it's typically very quiet sometimes. But young Christians make colossal mistakes sometimes, not always. A good friend of mine was telling a story that they went on a mission trip down to a foreign country, and I can't remember what it was. It was a place where they had to do their baptisms in a stream, apparently a very, very, very cold stream. And so the candidate for baptism got, knee deep in the river, and the preacher gave his little speech, and they're out there, and it's kind of getting cold. So okay, we need to get this baptism over with. So whoosh, took him down into the water, raised him up, and he came up cursing like a sailor. And everybody was like, great big eyes and red face and everything. And it's like, well, you don't change instantaneously. It caught him by surprise, and he reacted as he had been reacting all of his life. And so it was like, okay. But one of the things we need to work on is when we're surprised, we need to take care of our tongue. But new disciples are going to make mistakes, just like babies spill their milk, just like certain children will draw on the wall. Certain kids will back the car into the garage, trying to get out of the garage. I did that one time. Actually, not getting out, it was more or less getting in, but still, it was a mistake. Okay, so we just have to understand that. and we have to anticipate it, and we have to lovingly be ready to help them not make those mistakes over and over again. Any thoughts about helping someone work through their mistakes? Did you ever make a mistake after you were a new Christian? Did you ever say something you shouldn't have said? How many of us did that last week? Okay. So, that little parentheses there is kind of my snarky little. We never make mistakes, do we? No. Okay, number 3 kind of relates back to the change aspect. But when new folks come into the congregation, there's always power, relationships that have to change, adjusting, and also communication structures. For older congregations, especially congregations with established elderships, this is a huge problem. Because in that eldership, whether it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 men, there will be an established power arrangement. There's always kind of the grandpa, there's always the new guy, and you know, it's always a fascinating dynamic. But when they select new elders, now the apple cart gets turned over. And the power arrangements that used to work are altered a little bit. Not to say that's a good thing, not to say that's a bad thing, I'm just saying it just happens. And in congregations without elders. I've seen this happen in men's business meetings, that there's kind of the patriarch of the congregation. Very often he will kind of hold his tongue until all the younger guys have a chance to speak. And then when he speaks, it's kind of the voice of age and the voice of reason and the voice of wisdom. And somebody new comes into the congregation, they start meeting with the men, and those power relationships have to be adjusted. Like I said, it's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it's just a thing. Here.
You have to add in the human aspect, because with being a human comes the ego. We are Christians, but we are humans, and being a human being also means having that ego. And if somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to do this, and you have that mindset, that's mine, that's my responsibility, that's a blow to the ego. Nobody does this except for me. And it's hard to adjust to.
It's incredibly difficult. That's an ambulance.
That sounds like where the sheriff's comes.
Okay. I'm almost getting to the point that I can recognize the various sirens. And the state patrol has a much quicker, it cycles much more quickly. Okay, getting back, and Darren is absolutely correct that we are human. We will never, ever outgrow our humanness. And so if we are used to doing something and we think that we're doing a really good job of it, maybe we think we're doing a really bad job of it, doesn't really matter. Somebody else wants to share that responsibility, somebody else wants to share that particular role, we have to give it up, and that it's difficult and it hurts. And hopefully I am growing in that area. Once upon a time, and it wasn't really all that long ago, even, preaching, that was my job. That's my role. You don't take my job. Now I'm like, anybody want to stand up? Hey, I'll help you. I'll help you grow. One of these days, preachers don't ever retire. They just kind of fade away. one of these days I'm going to fade away, and I'm just going to let somebody else take over. So I'm becoming less and less wrapped up around the edges as I have been as a younger man. Okay, but even communication structures change. And one of the classes I had in my doctoral work was examining how congregations communicate, how we get our information. And we are so blessed in this congregation with so many different members. Manuel taking care of our IT stuff, but Cassie taking care of our communications. If we didn't have Cassie, it would be like running around without our right arm. That's my right arm. But she does such a good job keeping us all informed. And so I tip my hat to Cassie. And so many others have very, very, very important roles, most of which are not obvious, not hugely obvious. Those power structures, those communication structures are going to change slightly. At some point, or maybe many points along the way, it's going to make us uncomfortable, and I've already talked about that. We don't grow as physical human beings without pain and discomfort, and we don't grow spiritually without pain and discomfort. We don't grow numerically as a congregation without experiencing some parts of being uncomfortable. Here again, as a young congregation, a congregation that was just established, that's almost like we're excited about that. We want to see new faces, and we want to have people join us and all that kind of stuff. And we don't have our name on our pews yet, But I can pretty much take attendance by remembering where everybody sat. And every once in a while, the Hoyts mess me up. And they'll move from the goats to the sheep. And then I've got to stop and think, were they over on my left or were they on my right? Now, if the Edmondsons ever move, that really messes me up. I mean, they are the right-hand side staples. And, oh, heavens to Betsy, if Darren and Manuel ever switch, forget it. We might as well just cancel church. Because I couldn't preach if Darren was over here and Manuel was over there. That just, guys, don't do that next week. No, I can already see. Hey, let's switch.
I'm not ready to adjust to that change.
Okay, but like I said, congregations that don't have these really super hardly established structures and that kind of stuff, that comfort level, it's easier for them to adjust. And so the older that we are, the older the congregation is, and this congregation was established back in the 50s, I think. Okay, so we're kind of long of tooth, and there's some pretty well established thoughts and ideas and that sort of thing. So chances are we might feel a little bit more discomfort than other congregations. And then last but not least, at some point we have to grow our facilities. And that kind of gets back to what we were talking about last week, is that, okay, we have 3 or 4 new disciples. Maybe we need to have a class specifically for those new disciples. And if they are families and they've got young children, Addie is doing an absolutely fantabulous job with our youngsters. But what happens when we have so many youngsters down there that she can't handle them all? We're going to have 2 classes for the kiddos, maybe one for the little bitty kiddos and one for the older kiddos, and then maybe we need 3 classes, and so forth and so on. And so just like with a growing family, You get ready, you have that nursery, you set up the nursery, you've got the cradle in there, and you've got all the wall hangings, and you've got everything. You got to grow facilities. It's one of the things that we learned in looking for houses is that you can watch a family grow through the architecture of the house. You've got a one bedroom, one bath house. Well, and then little baby comes along, so we put another wing over here. It's a little bedroom. Well, they get older, and maybe another one comes along. Well, we need another bedroom, but we need another bathroom, and keeps going. There are some houses that you can go through, and it's almost like watching generations. Okay, this was the first house, and then this was the first edition. This was the second edition. Here's the second bathroom, and you can kind of do that with congregations. Here's the first building, and here's the education wing that was added on 20 years later, and here's the fellowship wing that was added on another 10 years later, and that sort of thing. So that's just something that's going to have to happen. And we are truly blessed in this particular location because we've got the downstairs already good to go. We've got a lot of land over there, and if we need to expand, we've got the room to do it. Any other thoughts, questions, observations, rotten tomatoes, anything related to preparing a nursery? I had originally thought that this was going to be the last lesson. I think I'm going to tack one more. I wanted to end it in August, but I think we're going to go ahead and tack one more lesson on next week and really kind of get down to some brass tacks and ask some questions about what we can do, you and I, together, to not only think about creating opportunities for Bible studies, but also what Brad was talking about, doing some strategic planning about growing our nursery, preparing our nursery for some new baby disciples. All right, got some folks coming in, getting ready for our worship service. Let's take a break so we can meet and greet and get ready for all of our worship service.